right, everyone, Sterling White here. Welcome to the Real Estate Experience hosted by myself. Truly appreciate everyone who was on here, and I do hope that you are getting value from it. Just some big news for myself, which many of you may have actually caught on to it, but I have formed the new firm, which is Steiner Investment Group, and I'm no longer with the company that I started in 2014, which was Holdfolio. So there's just cases where partners just have different visions, people grow, people get older and just have different ways of doing things. Not good or bad, we're definitely still on great terms, but just decided to go separate paths. So I started Steiner Investment Group, where I still focus on purchasing income producing multifamily in the Midwest. So that's enough about that. And it's still very cold here in Indianapolis. And also recently had a retreat. So I'm part of EO. I had mentioned that, and I'm pretty sure in one of my previous episodes, but still that was a phenomenal experience of always just better understanding, just becoming more aware of the blind spots. For me, I love to hone in on the blind spots. So one thing I really just wanted to make more of an effort to is just build more relationships outside of the business sense, fans, friends, family, etc. And then also, if you haven't already heard too, is the mentorship program that I did roll out to where you would be able to work with me. It's just due to demand. People keep asking me for it. So if you want more details on that, just go ahead and send an email to support@sterlingwhiteofficial.com, or just go ahead and comment below and we'll get you that information to see if it's a good fit for you. So do truly appreciate, as always, you being on this. And if you haven't already, I keep saying if you haven't already, I just got to keep giving these reminders. Hit that subscribe button so you can be informed moving forward of absolute bombs and golden nuggets dropped. And if you're just now coming across me, it's my fault that that is the case. But a little bit background on myself is born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I would say the not so good parts of the city where you wouldn't want to walk your dog at night or even during the day. I know many of you have actually heard that, but single mother, fraternal twin brother, and I would say the type of environment that I was in was one day I would have a friend that I'm playing basketball with, and the next day they would be gone. And in this particular case is they ended up losing their life to a pizza man because they ended up trying to own a robbery attempt, and that the pizza man just happened to be packing. And what I witnessed is that was just part of that environment. I never realized that it was rough because I was in it. And so grew up in Section 8 housing, welfare, food stamps, and I'm sure of any other type of government assistance. And my mother did the best with what she had, and I definitely love her for that. And so just anything above and beyond that this is where the entrepreneurship spirit came into existence. What I had to figure out a way to earn money legally, never went the illegal route. And first product was Kool-Aid, and then the second was Pokemon cards. And then from there, how I got started in real estate was in 2009, where things were not going so well in the industry at that present time. And my roommate was dad owned a construction company, and in my college days I was actually going to University of Indianapolis for human biology. No clue why I picked that. I enjoyed biology when I was in high school, and I decided, oh well, let me take that for a college major. Ended up not doing so well, took chemistry 1 and 2 a total of 5 times, but that's another whole topic in itself. And also one thing too is let me know how this glare is on my head. I just gave a nice clean shave, and so comment below and let me know if I have a nice shine going on. I really just want to get that feedback from you all. And so to go back into the story, is my roommate at the time, so I had some free time during the summers, so ended up that's how I got into construction, because his dad owned a construction company. I was a laborer, providing the more such as bricklayers and other odd jobs, and that's when I fell in love with real estate, but not so much the construction side. So shortly after, that's how I got into more of the investing. bought first deal at 23 years old, no money out of pocket, ended up leveraging my mentor's cash. And that just shattered a limiting belief that I had, because I always thought that real estate investing was only for the wealthy and you had to have a large amount of cash. That is not true by any means. And then I ended up scaling up to 150 single families. 2017 made the shift entirely to multifamily, got up to just under 600 units. And then since exiting out of several smaller apartments, and then also the single families, now my personal portfolio is just over 300 units. That valuation is 18.9 million. And why I'm telling you that, I still make mistakes to this day. I'm definitely not perfect by any means. And I share the trials, tribulations, the successes that I've had, because I believe in, shout out to Grant Cardone, what do you call that? Reinforcement is, yes, it's good to learn from your own mistakes, but it's even better to learn from others. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the content, which is my favorite deal structure. And I get often asked, Sterling, what's the best way to structure a deal? I would say that is one, that's not the right question, just my personal perspective on that, because depending on what someone is looking to do, they may want to do this structure. There's just so many ways to go about doing it, and there's really not a right or wrong way. Actually, there are wrong ways to do it, but there's quite a bit of right ways that you can structure too. It's just about what's more in line with what you're looking to achieve, and then also what you want to provide to your partners as well. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. And my favorite just overarching structure is the most simple one, the one I can take and break it down to an investor and a potential partner, and they understand it. So if it gets too complex, waterfalls, hurdles, and there's difficulty on that, then if it's difficult to explain, it's even more difficult at times for the person to grasp it, unless they're a little bit more sophisticated too. It just depends on the person that you're speaking with. But even then, if it's too complex to explain at times, is the person that you're pitching to will not want to invest. So those are the things I want to allude on that. And then, so there's a variety of ones, and I'll just go over the select ones that I've used personally, which there's debt, there's equity with preferred return, and there's just straight equity. By far, my favorite one is just straight equity, because it is what, out of the net, let's say it's at 15%, then going to the limited partners and then to the general partner, 15%, or general partner, what I mean by that is the person who curated and did the syndication, the operator, and then the LP limited partners are the passive partners that are contributing the cash. So the very first deal that I did was debt. And what I mean by debt is there's generally a fixed rate that you have to pay, similar to a mortgage payment where you have a fixed interest payment. That's exactly what a debt structure is, that when you structure that. So the very first deal that I put together, the 46 units that I recently exited out of, completely went full cycle from the time of purchasing to reposition, which reposition is just another way of putting in the improvements, pushing up the rents, and then exiting once you pushed up the value of the asset, And then from there ended up taking those, so ended up scaling from the smaller deals, well, it's all subjective in a way, to the ones to where you can get on-site staff, to where you can further get economies of scale. So but with that very first deal, total purchase price was $900,000, in which the seller provided financing of $700,000. So they carried back, so they owned it free and clear. This was their last property that they had. They were motivated, and the property was about 60% occupied. So you couldn't go and get financing such as from Freddie or so you couldn't get agency debt essentially, because it wasn't stabilized. It needs to be over 90%. This wasn't even close. So from that, don't want to get too much into the weeds and have it go over people's head, but in essence, this person was motivated to do seller financing because that was one of their limited options that they had. So purchase price $900,000. put 200,000 down to acquire and then raised additional cash to take care of the improvements, and was pushing up the rents between about $50 to $75 on a per unit basis. And of that raise that was contributed, the total amount to the investor partners, they got a fixed rate because that was the debt structure on that. And then also when it was sold, they would get a piece of that as well. There was a split in terms of what the net would be after, of course, all the expenses. So that was the very first deal. The next one is equity with a preferred return, which is pretty common, especially what I see amongst syndications. And I put together a syndication of this, and the preferred return can really vary. And preferred return is just simply, and you can Google this because there's some people use, well, generally there's just only one way that I've seen to do a preferred return. Some people may construe it as something else, but the way I've seen it mostly is if you have a preferred return of, let's say, 8%, for instance, on your deal, that your investors get paid until they get the 8% on their money. And then normally there is a split over that. Could be 75% to investors, and then for you, the general partner, that's when you start making money. So it's more incentivized for you, the operator, to get it to a certain, that 8%, and actually over more 8%, because that's when you start getting paid. So that's what some partners like to see, because they realize that they're going to get paid first, versus on the more equity model, which I'll get more into that a little bit later, is that is just straight from the get-go out of the net. That's each and every month. So one thing that happens on a preferred return, though, is if you're providing, let's say, a 10% and you end up only getting a 8% to your partners, then that 2% that you have carries over to the next year. So you have to get 10%. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Of course, you can structure it a little bit differently, but investors are more accustomed to that catch up that happens, meaning that if you only hit 8% and your preferred return is at 10%, so that's 2% that you weren't able to provide to them, then the next time you're going to have to get 12%, excuse me. It's called a catch up in essence. And then some operators is, if they're not able to get it through the duration of, let's say, the hold period, then they'll do all that catch up once they exit out of the property entirely. So that's one thing you have to be careful of when you are doing a preferred return, is just you have to ensure that the property will be able to deliver above and beyond that, so you'll be able to hit that. So that's one thing I want to mention. And there's so many different ways to be able to structure these, and different carve outs too, but don't want to get too much into the weeds. I wanted to just keep this very simple for you guys, and you may have to replay it. You may have to replay it a couple times to understand what I'm alluding to. And also, one thing is, I have the Mentorship Program, which I go more in depth in this and even provide case studies, even more into the trenches of how I put them together, how I was able to raise money, how to find investors, how, if you're looking at transition from single family to multifamily, in that mentorship program. So just go ahead and comment below if you'd like more information on that. Or the second is just to shoot over an email to support@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. So quick plug there. And then the next one, which is my favorite, is just the straight equity, which is by far my favorite one, is what they say, keep it simple, stupid. Not calling you stupid, but just to keep it simple. And straight equity is very exactly what it is, meaning that on the very first deals that I did, when, let's say, the majority goes to the investor partners, I just like to use the split of, let's say 80% goes to them for contributing the cash, and then 20% goes to the operator or GP, whichever you want to call it, that out of the net each and every month. That's how it's split. There's no preferred return or anything. So that's my preferred structure. It's very simple, and everyone is on the same page, and easy to explain as well. Because once you get into preferred return, you start to have hurdles, IRRs, what is it? Hurdle rates. That's when it can get a little bit complex on that. So, but it just comes down to your partners and investors that you're speaking with. They're a little bit, I've seen in the more larger deals, more institutional and sophisticated, that's when they throw in all of the hurdle rates, waterfalls, but that's just because that's a whole entirely different level with that. There's different financing. Don't want to go too much in the weeds on that, but just the overall subject is when going with structures is just to keep it as simple as you can. One is debt, and there's plenty of other ones out there. One is debt. There's an equity with a preferred return. There's mezzanine. There's all different ones, but I'm just sticking on these. There's the debt where you just have a simple fixed rate, let's say 7% on an annual basis. And then there is the equity with a preferred return. Let's say you have a preferred return. When you see a preferred, a pref is another way that you can say preferred return. There's normally a waterfall that goes after that, meaning after the pref is hit, that anything above and beyond 7% is split, let's say 80% to the limited partner, the investor partner, and then 20% to the general partner. That's just one that is very common that I see that investors like because they get paid first. And then there is the straight equity structure. And one of the downfalls with the preferred return is if you do not hit that pref, if it's 7% and you end up getting 5%, then that 2% tax on to the following year. And that can really get you into the hole as a as the person who put the deal together and who's running it, versus the straight equity really just keeps the interest right in line. So just don't want to get caught with that pref. So one book recommendation that I want to provide, Gary Vee, who many of you are aware of that individual. I haven't listened to him I listened to him every now and then, but not as often as I used to when I was really getting going on the content marketing side, the personal brand. But the book is Crush It. And Crush It just goes into all the tools, tactics, and strategies, and just the overall arching concept of just providing as much value as you can and building a personal brand. I am a huge advocate of the personal brand and pushing yourself out into the marketplace that way versus pushing it so much through the company. People like to do business with who they know and trust. And I've seen that it's even more easier and not as difficult to be able to build a brand around yourself. Just think of Apple. When you think of Apple, first thing that comes to mind is Steve Jobs. He was branding himself. And then when you think of Elon Musk, you think of Tesla. When you think of Tesla, you think of Elon Musk. Well, more of when you think of Tesla, you think of Elon Musk because he's just branded himself. And when people think of him, you think of SpaceX too. And then that's one concept that I really like that he did when he sold PayPal is he took all of those funds and went in, just really went all in into the companies that he had, meaning SpaceX and then also Tesla. And I believe there's one other company that he put some funds into as well. I know he's got that huge flamethrower, which is a really cool concept that he did, but I'm getting sidetracked. So just the personal branding is what I've seen myself. That's what I do with this podcast, for instance. When I'm on sites such as biggerpockets.com, everything filters through me in essence to be able to push to the various companies that I have and just pushing my face out there as much as possible. Of course, one thing that does come with the personal branding side is, I wouldn't say having, not vulnerability, but be willing to put yourself out there so people can connect with you. And the thing is, when you're putting yourself out there, you're going to have the trolls or the quote unquote haters is what people say. And when you get that negative feedback is, myself personally, how I treat it is, I just treat everything the same. Meaning that when someone throws a comment that's not very, it depends on the place that they're coming from. If it's actual feedback that they're critiquing, I will not internalize it, but I will take it in as feedback. But if I can tell they're coming from a wrong place, then I take it the same as if someone is giving praise in essence. So there's no really roller coaster type emotion, meaning that if someone gives praise, I'm not like, woo, awesome. That way, when someone gives a not so good one, that I'm not going all the way down. And I was just, someone commented the other day about one of my reps that I have that places outbound calls to people interested in, let's say, the acquisitions of apartments, for instance, that they were just not very nice in terms of the feedback that they had given. And I just said, thank you so much for your time. I'll be sure to provide them the insights. Enjoy the rest of your week. If anything happens to change on your side, don't hesitate to reach out. So just keep it very simple and use one of my favorite rules is just the art of agreement, and not ever try and make that person wrong on the other end. Just be very professional. So thanks everyone so much for being on this episode. Hit that subscribe button so you can be informed moving forward. And then also, if you want information on that mentorship program, go email support@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com. Have a great one. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.